Okay, so the next planet we're going to talk about is Jupiter. I think this is the planet everybody wants to look at in their chart because it's associated with luck, and really more than maybe luck isn't a good word to associate with Jupiter. Maybe more its expansion. I think the idea of Jupiter is growth, expansion, but it can be prosperity and good fortune. But it's associated also with, I don't know if you'd agree with this, but an urge for freedom, exploration, and travel. And I think in the general astrology cookbooks, the house and sign placement of your Jupiter in your birth chart is the area of life where you're granted gifts and blessings. But I'm hoping you can explain that.
Yeah,
more.
So that's the traditional explanation of astrology, which I would say, from what I can tell, is still the consensus amongst astrologers. Traditional astrology really made Jupiter out to be the grand benefic, like the Santa Claus, and then Saturn was like the devil, the big malefic, right? So Jupiter was all good and Saturn was all bad, and they're counterparts, they're opposites. I find that couldn't be further from the truth. Jupiter as well as Saturn have both good and bad qualities, as does every planet. So Jupiter, being known as the planet of luck, is definitely, as well as everything you described, that's very much the common classic description. I would say I don't necessarily disagree with any of that. What I would describe Jupiter as far as I understand what I've seen, and like I said, Jupiter is as much of a troublemaker as any other planet, as far as I've seen, at least excluding the outer three planets. I would say the outer three planets are more inclined to cause trouble than the rest of them. We'll get into why when we get to those planets. Jupiter seems to accelerate and expand, whatever it is. So it's like things speed up and increase, which can be a wonderful thing if it's something you want. If it's something you don't want, that might not be so good. So the sign and house that Jupiter falls in may show where you can find perhaps good luck and expansion, perhaps also your optimism, your meaning in life. A topic that is very much, I would say, as much a part of Jupiter's archetype that does get talked about, but not as much, is it's the energy of the philosopher, where you find meaning in life. So Jupiter, being the ruler, so Jupiter rules Sagittarius, which would be the opposite of Gemini. So if you think of Gemini likes to learn a little bit about a lot of things, kind of scan, the surface and kind of get all over the place, Jupiter wants to go in depth into like a big, meaningful topic. Very often it's of a philosophical or religious nature, though not always. And it's maybe less interested in trivial things. So travel is also very much part of Jupiter's archetype. It's that energy of wanting to explore and to be free, and to have fun. So Jupiter is also the former ruler of Pisces, though I give Pisces the rulership to Neptune. The Neptune energy is much more like Pisces, in my opinion. Jupiter would also be considered exalted in Cancer, so in fall in Capricorn, and then it would be in detriment in Gemini. So you could say it's in dignity. I think that's kind of more what's commonly said is Jupiter would be dignified in Pisces and in debility in Virgo. So it's kind of this more general term. It's, maybe rules Pisces, maybe it's just exalted there, or kind of somewhere in between. So the dark side of Jupiter that people don't really talk about is like carelessness, recklessness, tactlessness. I find people who have like a prominent Jupiter Sagittarius energy are inclined to just blurt things out. They could be preachy very often, kind of know-it-all type stuff. Careless, irresponsible, flakiness. It's that free spirit, right? Responsibility is of like not of any concern to Jupiter. It's the energy of fun and freedom. So, this is where that kind of balance between Saturn and Jupiter comes in. Because if you have all Jupiter and no Saturn, you're probably not going to be very thoughtful or responsible or reliable, things like that. So that would also then perhaps show up when Jupiter has hard aspects, like say, it's like square to the sun or something like that. You may see a pattern like being irresponsible and flaky or preachy, kind of belligerent, even something like that.
And I think a good example, when you were talking about this idea that, Jupiter might not always be about luck and good things when we talk about expansion. I know when we did that video on Saturn and the Pluto conjunction, Jupiter was also in the mix in the beginning of January 2020. Yeah. So we did one video on the Pluto Saturn conjunction and oppositions, and we talked about 9/11, and then we also talked about the beginning of the pandemic in January 2020. And I think probably Jupiter did play a big part in why that was such a big transit. I don't know if you have any thoughts about that.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting with the pandemic and everything. People talk about the Saturn Pluto cycle, but Jupiter was also there as well. And, certainly Jupiter having that energy of accelerating and expanding things, but also perhaps bringing this element of kind of like philosophical, so if you think about like the authorities kind of, or, certain people kind of getting on their high horse about, what you should be doing. It's this whole experience with pandemic has been very polarized, with both sides saying we're right and you're wrong, and this is why you should be doing what I say you should be doing and not what you believe is right. That's very much like a kind of twisted Jupiter type behavior.